Well, hi everyone, Corey Barker here again, and this time around we are going to look at some more compositing tricks. Now, I was actually looking at, and some of you may have seen this show, it's called True Detective. It was actually on HBO. Never actually watched the show, but what I do know about it is it had a very cool title sequence. And in the beginning, the title sequence, it had all these different kind of double exposure images and thought it was really cool effect. So started playing around with it here in Photoshop and kind of got some interesting results playing around with it. Just a few different techniques you may or may not have thought of in order to achieve this effect. So we're going to start with a texture. Now I've got a very simple texture here I got from Photo Art Textures, and I'm just going to go ahead and obviously rotate it because I need it to be vertical. So we'll just go and do a counterclockwise rotation there, and I'm just going to go ahead and bring it on over. Now I'm adding the shift key as I drag and drop so it will land in the center, and we'll just put it in free transform, and then command 0 or control 0 will expand the document out, and we'll just go ahead and scale this to fit in our document. Now the texture itself is great. It's one of the things I like about it, and that's why I want to use it. However, the color is not very great, as I don't really care about the color. So I'm simply going to remove it by pressing Shift Command U, and that goes ahead and desaturates the texture, makes it a little bit darker. Or I want to make it a little bit darker, actually. Let's go and it actually removes the color and leaves it desaturated. But I am going to use levels and just darken it up just a little bit to help bring out that texture and the scratches and everything a little bit there. There we go. There we go. All right. Now, let's jump to our first image, which is going to be the base silhouette image of our design here. And this has got this guy that's on a white background. It's going to obviously make it very easy to extract from the background. So we're going to go ahead and start by grabbing the quick selection tool. And since he's on a solid white background, I'm going to go ahead and select the background first instead of selecting just him. So I'm just going to go ahead and drag around him and get all the white areas selected here. And all of that looks pretty good, and we'll simply go to select and choose inverse. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on Refine Edge, and let's go ahead and do this on layers. I'm just going to go ahead and use the Refine Radius tool up here in the head area just to get a little cleaner selection around the hair here. So we'll just kind of paint in that area there, and that gets a little bit cleaner, and the rest of the selection looks pretty good. I'm just going to bump that edge detection radius up just a hair, just to grab any little elements there might be in there. So I'm going to go ahead and click, actually let's go ahead and put new layer on here for output to, and then go ahead and click OK, and it brings it up to a new layer and nicely extracted. So again, like the texture, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and drag and drop it over into the working document. Now again, it came over very large because our final document here is a little bit smaller in resolution. So again, I'm going to press Command T and then Command 0, and let's just go ahead and scale this in to fit in our composition here. Let's just do right here, and I think that looks pretty good. All right. So we got our texture and our main subject shape in place. Now we have another image, which is this woman's face here. Now, I want to combine this into this shape, and what I want it to do is just kind of subtly define the shape of the guy, and you see her face kind of embedded in there. Now, the first thing over here is I'm going to, I don't need any color on the guy, so just like before, I'm going to go ahead and remove the color and press Shift Command U. In fact, we're going to pretty much removing the color from all the images. We're going to add color, a color cast back in when we are done. But for now, let's go ahead and do that, and I'm going to go ahead and take this image here and just drag and drop it on over. It's considerably smaller, but it's only going to be a background element or kind of a subtle blended element. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger here and scale it up just a little bit. Let's put it right about here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and clip it inside of the shape of the guy here. Now, before I do that, I actually want the guy to be a lighter color rather than dark. So here's where the trick comes into play here. I'm going to do Command or Control I, and that's going to invert that image. We're going to reactivate this image here, and we're going to do a clipping group. Now, let me bring out the layers panel so you can see what's going on here. So we've got the inverted shape of the guy just below, and then just above it, this layer of this woman. Now I'm going to hold down the Option key and click in between the layers and activate a clipping group, and that's going to put the woman's head inside of this shape. So now what I'm going to do is use the shape, some of the elements of her face to kind of combine with the shape of the guy here. You'll notice how the curve of the arm comes down and pretty can rest right into her cheek there. And I'm just going to nudge this over a little bit until that kind of lines up right about there. That looks pretty good. Now, again, I'm going to take the color out of this woman's face, and we'll go ahead and do that there. And that looks pretty good. Now, let's zoom back out here. So we can see that we've got some area down here where it's a little dark. So, or it's actually showing up that bottom area of the image here. So I'm actually going to nudge it down just a hair, and we'll get right about there. Now, if I wanted to make this arm really work, I could actually go over here and just do a warp. And if I just press Command T on the shape of the guy and just do warp here, I can actually grab this and just nudge this down a little bit and help that conform to the cheek a little bit better there. Something like that. All right. So we've got our overall shape in place. Now what I want to do is blend it a little bit better. So we're going to do that. Well, let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to put a layer mask on the layer containing the shape of the guy. Now before I do that, I want to make a duplicate of this layer here containing the woman. So I'm going to press Command J, and I want to place this duplicate layer underneath the layer containing the main shape. So I turn those, there we go. So I'm keeping them lined up. You'll notice that the two images are lined up. So don't move it out of alignment, just move the layer itself, but don't move the actual image there. Now with this image selected, I'm going to hold down the Option key on Mac, Alt on Windows, and click on the layer mask icon down here at the bottom. And it will add a hide all layer mask. Notice it's filled it with black, so it's hiding the image right now. Now back at the shape, the silhouette shape of our guy, I'm actually going to go over here and add a layer mask to that shape right there. I'm just going to jump over here and use a radial gradient. And we're using the foreground, the transparent gradient, and I want it to be normal. And we're going to set the foreground color to black by pressing D, then X. And I'm just going to go over here and just give this a little bit of a fade in certain areas. I want the side of the face here where it kind of goes to white just to kind of fade into the background a little bit more and adds a little bit more drama to that shape there. And I can just go around and add more layer masking just to kind of give other areas of the image a little bit more fade and makes it a little bit more interesting. In fact, if you could come out, you don't have to be right next to the object. I can go ahead and just expand this out here and then come out from the side and have a little bit subtle fade coming in from the outside area there. But we're maintaining the overall look and shape here of the image. So let's actually bring some of this back here so where we can see a little bit more of the eye there. That looks pretty good. Now, remember that shape we had that has the hide all layer mask on it? Well, we're going to go over and use that same gradient, and again using white as the foreground color. But I'm going to go down and bring the opacity down to about 75, and then just go ahead and just do this and bring in a little bit more of that hair. So it kind of looks like her face is extending beyond the shape of the guy and is kind of filling in the background area back here. I can reveal as much as I want here, depending on how much you really want to reveal. Now you'll notice what's going on here. Some interesting things happening. Because of the way we're combining the shapes here, this part of the guy, if I turn that on and off, you notice how the silhouette of the guy is almost acting like a color of a shirt or something that this woman might be wearing in here. So it's kind of really performing some really interesting things here and dressing the subject and adding a little bit more drama to the overall scene. Now, right up here, I'm actually going to go and select right on the shape that's contained inside of this element here. And I'm going to make it a little bit darker. I'm actually going to create a new layer, and let's set the linear gradient, and I'm going to go ahead and set the opacity at 100%. And I'm just going to go in and directly on that gradient, or right on that object. Now, I changed my blend mode, but I want to change the blend mode of the gradient tool here to actually no, not multiply, but overlay. And then coming in right from the edge, what I want to do is kind of a little bit more define the top edge of my silhouette here. So I'm just going to drag in a little bit. And notice how it gets a little bit darker there. And it's helping define the shape of my guy just a little bit better. Now, also going to go over here and just mask out. I'm actually going to put a layer mask on that same image and just mask out a little bit where, of the area where the face is here so we can see some more of those features. I'm not seeing anything because I still have it in the overlay mode, so let's go ahead and do that. There we go. Let's go ahead and do kind of that as an elliptical, or I'm sorry, a radial gradient there, so that's defining the shape a little bit better. So we're getting a little bit darker edge there. It looks pretty good and everything. So now let's add a little bit of color element to it. And I'm going to do that through a gradient map. So I'm going to go into the adjustment layer menu here, go down here and choose gradient map, and make sure it's at the very top of the layer stack here in the layers panel. Now you're going to click on the gradient preview here, and you're going to open up where you see all your default gradients. Now you may only see the handful of default gradients are in here. It's like 1 or 2 rows. But what you need to do is go into this little pop-up menu and add these other elements here and add the color harmonies and such, which is what I've got here. And I'm going to go ahead and choose this one here, which is third from the left here. Just click on this kind of blue, yellow, and black one here, and you'll see what it's done to the overall image. It's added a nice, real interesting color cast and making it a little bit more dramatic. What I am going to do, though, is change the blend mode of the adjustment layer now from normal to multiply. And you'll see what it's done is it's increased the contrast. I'm going to drop the opacity of that just a little bit because it's a little too dark there. So there we go. So it's increased the contrast. It's added color, a lot of that yellow in the lighter areas, and then this kind of blue cast is very subtle in the darker areas. So we're getting a nice, nice mix of things happening here. I'm actually going to add a little bit more of a gradient on that layer mask right here, because what I want to do right here is add a kind of light element. And I'm going to do that, again, under the gradient map adjustment layer. I want that to be at the very top at all times, no matter what I add in here. But I am going to add a simple radial white gradient right here. And that gives it a little bit of a light burst in there. You kind of interacts with the element there. But this would be a perfect place to add the title of the movie or just to add whatever one wanted to say right here. But you can see a lot of really cool things you can do just with silhouette shapes and combining them to get this kind of double exposure effect, like I said, like I saw in that title sequence. Now, bit far cry from what I saw in the title sequence, but you need a place to start. It was an inspiration and really kind of spun out of, I won't say out of control, but really just kind of took on a life of its own and ultimately turned into this effect here just by playing around with 2 images. You'll notice what we've got in the layers panel here. It's really quite simple. Is 2 images, well, basically 2 images, and one is just duplicated, and there's 2 instances of it, and we have an adjustment layer. And that's really all that's going on here. It's all a matter of just creative masking and positioning of the layers to ultimately achieve a very dramatic look using this double exposure effect here inside Photoshop.